moment. We are live.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to David T. Howard's Go Team meeting, where we will follow the agenda that has been emailed to you and publicly noted. I am pleased to call this meeting to order at 4:48 p.m. Our first order of business is roll call. Ms. Baker, will you kindly call the roll for us, please?
I shall, sir. All right. Ms. Antone?
I am here.
Mr. Abernathy?
Present.
Mrs. Baker is here. Dr. Bryant?
Present.
Mr. Webb?
Present.
Ms. Reese?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Keenan? I see you. I didn't hear you though. Ms. Walker? And we still have our vacant seat. And Ms. Sheets?
Yes, here.
Good to see you.
All right, Ms. Baker, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we do.
Thank you. Next order of business is to approve the agenda. It has been provided to you and copies are available. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, thank you. I would like to propose a change to move facilities master planning to a discussion item instead of having it under principals report.
All right. So you want that to go after the cluster advisory committee?
That is fine, yes.
Are there any other changes to the agenda? All right, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda with the noted change. Joy Sheets.
All right, Ms. Sheets with the motion. Do I have a second?
This is Audrey Reese, I second.
All right, it's been properly motioned and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand into the camera. Any opposed? Raise your hands in the camera. Any abstentions? All right, the agenda is approved. Next is the approval of the previous minutes. Those were emailed to everyone. Let me know when I have a motion to approve the previous minutes.
This is Mrs. Baker. I move to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Baker. Do I have a second?
Jesse Webb, I second.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. It's been properly moved in second. All those in favor, please raise your hand into the camera. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Previous minutes have been approved. We will now hear from Ms. Antone as we review. Well, we've already done the strategic plan. I see this in the script. We've already completed those.
Do you have that script for the budget?
Yes, I'm looking through the updated one you sent me.
Okay.
Okay, so it does say we will now hear from the principal as they review the final strategic plan with our priorities ranked.
Yeah, that sounds like the other one.
Okay, let me shift.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift over.
It should just be reviewing the budget.
That's what I was assuming,
Yeah.
but I was
Okay.
looking through the scripts.
Okay. I can go ahead and.
Okay, we will now move to our next item of business, the budget approval presentation. Principal Antone, please share with us our final budget presentation.
Thank you. All right, I will go ahead and share my screen. Just let me know if you are
We
able
can
to.
see that.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Okay. All right. So the last time we met, we did do a review of what the proposed budget entailed. And this is basically the budget by function that shows you that 84% of our budget pretty much goes to salaries. When we looked at the options, what we're looking at due to the $540 something thousand deficit that we had to get down to that zero balance, we are looking at removing the positions of connections math, the dean positions, the position that was part-time ESOL, part-time Spanish, the SEL coach removed, one clerical staff, the part-time media paraprofessional position, and then the non-instructional para from the CARES FY22 funds. And then we were looking at using CARES funds, the rollover funds, as well to fund a counselor so that we can have 3 counselors, 1 per grade. To fund an instructional coach for ELA using CARES funds, a restorative practice coach as well, who would also work with 504s using CARES funds FY23, also funding an instructional math coach, and also bringing on a signature program specialist. Also a full-time Spanish teacher. We actually earned an ESOL teacher instead of having a part-time ESOL, full-time and then a part-time ESOL teacher. We have earned 2 FTEs, so 2 ESOL teachers there. That will be next year. And then a full-time certified media specialist. And so one change I do want to highlight in terms of our paraprofessionals, and these are our special ed paraprofessionals. One of our paraprofessionals will move on to the high school where it's a one-on-one para and they're following a student. So for next year, it will be 8 paraprofessionals there. And those are earned positions. And you'll see throughout the presentation, if you see something in blue or purple, those are pretty much earned positions. And so you would also have 4 positions in leadership, a principal, 1 business manager, 3 assistant principals, that's 1 per grade, 3 counselors, 1 per grade, and then 2 instructional coaches, and once again, 1 signature program specialist. We talked about class sizes as well. For 6th grade, 16 teachers, we will have approximately 23 students per class, 7th grade, approximately 24 students per class, and then 8th grade, approximately 26 students per class. What you see now in the presentation is basically a summary that was requested the last time we met. And you'll see here where 84% of the budget goes here. When you're looking at staffing with math teachers, 10, you have 8 science teachers, 9 social studies teachers, and 12 ELA teachers. And what happens is that you'll see on probably the next slide is that the reason these numbers don't look equal or they look, different in numbers, our gifted teachers are on various teams throughout the building, and they teach math, they teach science, and they teach social studies and ELA as well. And so we do have art teachers. We have one band teacher, one music teacher, one orchestra, 3 PE teachers, 4 performing arts teacher. That's 1. We have 4 world language teachers, 10 gifted teachers, as I talked about earlier. And where you see CTE teacher, that is a position that we have to have per the district. That is an earned position. That's why it is, you see the average cost amount there is kind of highlighted in blue, or the font is in blue. Meaning, as we had to make adjustments to the budget, as we had to get it down to that 0 balance with those earned positions, we couldn't touch any of those positions because they are earned and they would not impact the budget, because we couldn't take them away. And so only the positions that are not earned, we would be able to look at in terms of positions when you're looking at removing in a position. So JLC, that is also earned. We have 1 ESOL teacher. Once again, we did earn 1 more, so there are 2. Into our teachers, our special ed teachers, we have 10. Our special ed lead teacher, or better known as our SELT, 1, and our MOID special ed teacher in the self-contained setting is 1. Also, our autism teacher is 1, and our special ed paraprofessionals, that's 8. There, you'll see here we have 2 assistant principals. 1 is listed later here as interim assistant principal, and we also have school business manager 1, 1 school secretary, 1 registrar, 2 counselors here, media specialist earned, that's 1. We do earn a nurse as well, that's 1, and our social worker. Custodians, we did have 3 custodians, 1 school psychologist, and we have one school resource officer that we earn, and our district does work with us where we're able to share one of our resource officers, where they do go between us and Hope Hill, and they can be called to any school to assist. And so we will still have access to that additional SRO as we look at the size of our building. Site manager, that's 1 earned. And then we have 1 school technology specialist, and then 1 interim principal, 1 interim assistant principal. And so in terms of the interim title for the principal and the assistant principal, HR will take care of that as that process is carried out with hiring a new principal. And so under non-staffing, there was $338,852,000 that set aside. And part of that, we have the reserve funds that we will not touch. You'll want to look at that at the beginning of next year, as we see what leveling looks like. We did put money in postage. Since we'll have a new signature program next year, funds were devoted to that program, whether you're looking at dues, fees, travel, and just starting up a new signature program at Howard. Also, funds were set aside for teaching and other supplies, student incentives, media supplies, stipends, and also substitutes. Okay. There were some questions that were asked as well, just in trying to answer some of those questions. I know, what was it?
Actually, before you go to this slide, there were a number of positions that were missing from the summary.
Okay.
So for example, there's no restorative coach, listed in the chart up above. There's no parent liaison. The signature program specialist isn't listed. Only 2 counselors are listed. So where are all those positions? Were they just inadvertently left off, or what is the status of all those?
Yeah, so those positions will be here. That's what is on the budget for right now. And I guess as we approve it, those positions will be approved for next year. There will be the restorative practice coach. We will have the 3rd counselor as well. Yes. So
Okay.
those, yeah. That's
And what about parent liaison? That's
Yeah.
not listed anywhere.
Yes, parent liaison will also be part of the CARES fund, so there will be a parent liaison as well.
Okay. And I think we had talked about hiring additional paraprofessionals. And I thought there were, on the budget from last meeting, there were 2 additional paraprofessionals. Did those go away?
So we had 9 paraprofessionals initially, and then once we had our budget meeting with our HR specialist, we did clarify that it would be 8, as one will move over to the high school as they are a one-on-one para. For the CARES Act funds, we did talk about in the last meeting where once we look at leveling and what that will look like, possibly bringing on, let me go back, I can go back in the presentation. Bringing on, yeah, here it is. And so in the last meeting, we talked about in that first row, providing necessary supports and resources to enhance teaching and learning, curriculum and instruction under strategies, hire paraprofessionals to assist with reducing the non-instructional duties for teachers. And we talked about hiring 2 paraprofessionals with FY23 leveling reserve funding. And so that would be at next year, once we look at leveling.
Okay. And I have another question about the restorative practice coach. So is that a new position that is there a position this year called restorative practice coach?
So our deans, we do call them deans, but on the budget, they are listed as restorative practice coaches.
Okay, so we're eliminating 3 dean positions, but adding back 1 restorative practice coach.
Yes, using different funding for the 1 restorative practice coach. So it will be, instead of using the SSF funds, we'll be using the CARES Act funds. Let me go to that.
And what is the process for interviewing for, the positions that have been eliminated and the new positions?
Yeah, so for interviewing, positions have already been posted, and candidates are applying. And so I know that hiring will begin really soon, as the applications are coming in. So that process is getting ready to take place.
Great, thank you. I just think the chart's confusing, because as I said, like I found the chart confusing because it didn't match up with the different things we talked about. Like it doesn't have the 3rd counselor position. And I understand what you're saying. Those are funded by a different bucket of money, but maybe that chart needs something at the end, additional positions, so that when someone looks at the chart, they would see all of the positions in one place.
Perhaps what we could add is a chart for the CARES Act funding.
And yeah, I think that's a good idea. My big worry is that CARES funding is temporary. So I can't imagine losing all of these positions that we're funding this year with CARES money. So I guess that's for the next go team to tackle, but that concerns me that so many positions are being funded with a temporary funding mechanism.
Yeah, and do keep in mind that we had a $500,000 deficit, and majority of our budget does go to salaries. And so when you're looking at trying to get that deficit down, you're looking at salaries. And so using the CARES Act funds is what we did to try to make sure that we are able to have, these positions at our school. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you addressing all those questions.
No problem. Let's see, let me go back. One of the things,
Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Antone. I did have one more question.
okay.
On the previous slide, if you go up one,
Mhm.
there's a site manager. What? I wasn't familiar with that position. What is site manager?
Yes, the site manager is, I kind of call him our building engineer. This particular person actually works with repairing things in our building when they need repairing, any type of issues that happen with, let's say, our air or something goes out. Currently, Mr. Barkley serves as our site manager at our school at Howard. He works with, anything that's going on. If there's a repair to be made, like if a hole is punched in the wall, or if he has to paint something, or if, there's something going on with our air or whatever the case, he takes care of all those types of things for our building, making sure that the building is kept up and things are running smoothly in terms of our actual physical.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Mhm. Let's see. Also, and I know there was a concern about restorative practice. The trainings are held every year. We've had additional staff in the building who's had, the training in previous years as well. And counselors will be encouraged to attend restorative practice trainings. And our students who receive interventions, they're identified by the universal screener, which we use now called MAP. And so those students are receiving interventions during the intervention block, as well as many of those students have been identified because of the deficits where they are needing more intensive support. And so students actually receive MTSS or additional support in math in the core academic classrooms, like their regular math classrooms as well. And then some of those same students are actually getting connections math. I know that was a concern about that particular position in terms of the connections math. And so as you know, we're having to make difficult decisions in terms of what positions that we abolish. That was one where we saw students were still able to get the necessary supports in more than one area or in more than one class, shall I say, since they do have the intervention block and they do have the MTSS process that's carried out in the core academic classroom. And then just share some data, some current data that we've received from our mid-year inventory. Students took a math inventory at the beginning of the year in an intervention block using the Math 180 inventory. And basically what you see here are quintile averages in growth for those particular grade levels. And in looking at that and trying to interpret it, at the mid-year level, kids are basically where they're making some good progress, especially having a tool, a new platform that we're using and a new tool in terms of carrying out those interventions. In sixth grade, the way it works is at the beginning of the year, if a student scored below basic on the inventory, then that student is expected to have at the mid-year point when they took this inventory, again, for the second time, anywhere between 42 and 65 average growth in quintiles. Whereas a student at the beginning of the year in sixth grade, if they were at the basic level when they first took the test, then they are expected to be anywhere between 35 and 62 when they on average in quintiles when they took it at mid-year. And then with eighth grade, for example, if the first score they had, if they were below basic, you want them to be between 27 and 45 in terms of average growth in quintiles. And eighth grade they're doing really good because their average growth in quantile is 62. Whereas if they were basic at the beginning of the year, at mid-year point, you'll want them to be between 25 and 42. And eighth grade has really exceeded that. And when you look at individual teacher data, some of the teachers scored anywhere between 40, 42, and 159 average growth in quantiles, which is outstanding. And so, like I said, being that this is the first year, everything is new, really trying to grasp, the new tools and making sure that we are providing some quality interventions during that PMB block. The data shows right now that, it's working. And so just wanted to share that information because I know that there was concern about whether or not that intervention block is working for our students in math. And like I said, in addition to that, some of those students also get that support inside of the math classroom through the MTSS process, which is multi-tiered systems of support. We used to say RTI, response to intervention, or SST, so many acronyms there, but so I just wanted to share that data as well.
And Ms. Antone, I had a question on this. At the top, or in the top there, it says total math inventory students 262.
Right.
So are the 262 students who receive math instruction during PMB? Is that what that is?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And did those 262, did they receive math during all 4 interventions per week?
So some of them receive 4 days and some of them receive 2 days. It just depends on the students' MAP scores at the beginning of the year and mid-year. If it showed that they needed assistance with math only, then, or if math was a really, really strong deficit, then they had 4 days. But if they showed what they needed, there was a strong need for reading as well, then those students may have 2 days of math and 2 days of reading.
And then, so is there another category of students who only get reading during the intervention block?
Yes, that is correct.
So do you know how many students total get, I guess it's P, how many students get the P part of PMB, proficiency, the additional tutoring or additional support, and how many get the B, the beyond portion? Yeah,
so when you're looking at, you're going to be looking at any, on average, let's see, you're going to be looking at about 800 students or so, about 800 students or so who will be getting the beyond, is proficiency. Or when you say, what I'm talking about is proficiency. But the students who are receiving the interventions, we want them to get to where they can be proficient. And you're looking at on average about 300 students. And then the students who are getting the extensions will be the other students outside of that, on average 300 students. Any other questions? Or any other things that need to be clarified? Okay. If you don't have any other questions regarding the budget, I will turn it back over to our chair, Coach Abernathy.
All right. Have the script. All right, thank you, Principal Antone, for sharing this information. I will now entertain a motion to approve the budget.
Oh, are we gonna, can we have any more discussion, Coach? The Go team received an email from a parent expressing concerns about the budget and equity issues?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So hopefully everyone had a chance to read the email, but we received an email today from a parent who expressed some equity concerns, and whether the elimination of the math position and the 3 dean positions disproportionately impacts students. She raised several concerns about the budget and asked that we consult the APS Office of Equity to address those concerns. And I responded to the email that I have found as a Go Team member this whole budget process very frustrating. I feel that the way it's been set up is really for us to rubber stamp a budget that's been developed. And please let me make very clear, this is not a slight on Miss Antone. Miss Antone is, followed the process that was given to her, and she's worked extremely hard on this budget. So I 100% applaud her efforts and all of her time on this budget. But I do feel that the system is really broken, that the Go Team isn't able to provide meaningful input and support. And I told the parent, I honestly have no idea. I don't know if the elimination of the dean's positions, creates issues related to equity. I don't know if that's going to hurt the students. Because we haven't been given the training, resources, data to make those determinations. We started this process with our strategic plan, and we identified some of our top priorities. One of our top priorities was to provide additional supports to teachers. I don't know if this budget does that. We've added instructional coaches, but I haven't had an opportunity to talk to teachers, to talk to experts in the field, to know if instructional coaches really do further our goal of providing more support to teachers. So I think, I think this parent raised several important issues about the elimination of the dean's positions, the elimination of the math connections position. And unfortunately, I just had to tell her I don't have the information or necessary background to address those issues. So I hope that there can be changes to the budget process and the Go Team process so that we have an opportunity to come together and brainstorm and talk about, these are our goals. What is the best way to achieve the goals? What does the data show about dean's positions? What does the data show? Actually, Ms. Antona has provided data about the math intervention block. So I actually do feel we do have data now to address that concern about the math intervention, the elimination of the math intervention position. But I don't feel that the process allows for meaningful input from the Go Team. So I guess that was more of a speech than a question, but I just wanted to share my thoughts.
I know the question was raised about equity. And let me just say that Howard, our deans those positions were something created at Howard that's unique to our building. So you won't find other schools with deans. And so the positions were developed to really, since we didn't have instructional coaches, to try and free up the assistant principals so they could deal more with instruction. However, so deans pretty much took on the role that is actually a part of the assistant principal's role in terms of dealing with disciplinary behaviors and the management piece of their jobs. And so with all of the initiatives that we have this year in the new platforms and just, APS 5 and trying to make sure that teachers are supported, the instructional coaches actually add to that in terms of building teacher capacity, because they're going to be experts in those particular content areas and be able to focus on just that instead of being pulled away for, all of the things and issues that have to be addressed that goes on with kids and just the day-to-day operations. And so that's pretty much how the dean positions were developed when we had all of the, the extra funding that we really don't have now. And so just to gain a little understanding of the background of how the dean positions were brought about. And in terms of restorative practices or restorative practice sessions, we've had several individuals in the building trained on that, even, when we were at the Inman building, and we'll continue to make sure that other individuals throughout the building are trained as well.
All right, Mr. Kobe has her hand raised.
I just, want to remind y'all that there are choices to be made. And one of the slides that Principal Antone showed was that class sizes could be as large as 32 students per class. But one of the priorities that you all decided on as a team was to support teachers. And so this budget, based off the slide that Ms. Antone showed, has class sizes of only 24 to 26 students versus 32. So again, unfortunately, there are not the funds to fund everything, right? And that's why we have you do the priorities and rank them. And I would love to hear from some of the teachers, would you rather have, because if Ms. Antone were to structure the budget such that there were 32 students per class, then you would have fewer instructional teachers and have funds for other positions. So that is something the Go team can discuss as a possibility. But again, when you look at what you wanted for priorities, that's what Ms. Antone had to structure the budget around, which is why that conversation comes before they build the budget. So Ms. Keenan, to some of your comments, were there any priorities that you all had ranked as one of your first 2 or 3 priorities that you feel that Ms. Antone did not address in this budget? With go back to your strategic plan, look at those priorities. And if one of your top that's where you want to look at it, because just remember, in our strategic plans, you don't prioritize, you can't address every priority every year because it's a multi-year plan, and it's kind of like building a house. You start with a foundation and you build the walls and then the roof. You can't go straight to the roof. So that's why we want you all to talk about those strategic plans and those priorities and rank them. So that would be where I would start this conversation to talk about, does this budget address those priorities, and also to hear from the teachers on what some of their thoughts are.
I'm not a math teacher, so I cannot speak to, the data that was presented by Ms. Antone definitely shows that interventions are working in math. A concern that I do have is that I feel like with Read 180, that is really supposed to be at most schools, at least the schools I've been in like 1,000 years ago, had it as a connections class. And so kids were, if they were getting it 5 days a week, or they were getting it, 3 days a week. And I worry that our kids that are split, that are having math 2 days a week and reading 2 days a week, I feel like that's just not enough time with the program. Me personally, I have a group. I am the teacher in 8th grade that has kids for Read 180 4 days a week. And I feel like I am seeing growth. I see like we're able to have lessons and we talk about issues, and we, like it feels like a class. When I had 2 groups 2 days a week, that felt much more disjointed. So, and if they miss a day, then they're only missing, then they only get 1 day of it a week. So having an intervention 1 day a week, that's not very effective, if at all. So I'm kind of hoping, and I think that is the district model that they've set up, but I would love for us to look at the data and say, how can we make choices on if kids are in math or reading? I think for their brains, they would also, like, I know 4 days a week, this is where I go.
Yes, and that could definitely be a quick change as going into the new year and scheduling, because of course scheduling they would have to be scheduled before
Right.
the fall. So that's something that could easily be adjusted.
And another thing that I would like to share is the whole thing about instructional coaches for math and for language arts, ELA. I think that David T. Howard needs those kind of personnel within our PLCs, making presentations, new innovative things that are coming down the pike. They get that training, they bring it back to the various teachers on various grade levels. And I think it's needed because we haven't had it in about 4 or 5 years. And it's really
Longer
needed
than
at the
that.
school.
We haven't had an English one in a long time.
Oh my gosh, we really,
Since
you're right.
I
You're
got
right.
in 2009, I don't think we've
No,
had
you're
an
right.
English coach.
You're right, Miss. Yeah, you're right. We did have a math. We did have a math.
We had math, but we
And
haven't had
these people would be math majors or ELA majors, and not someone who think they know math, or they think they know ELA, or they think they know, and they are social studies teacher. So you see, we will, I think we will benefit that greatly at Howard.
One of the things to note too is that those coaches, because they are, math and ELA, they would also be able to work, like the ELA person would also be able to work with social studies, and the math person would be able to do science. And because I am in all of the district meetings, and I know that there are instructional coaches meetings, our school we're not able to benefit from all of the resources and just everything that those instructional coaches are getting and being able to bring back to the schools. Our teachers they're just not getting it. And even during the intervention block, there's that type of expertise, that the trainings that they get and the things that they're able to help our teachers with is greatly needed during that intervention block, especially there. And, with Amplify and with, like I said, APS 5. So I definitely see the need for it in terms of building teacher capacity and making sure that that trickles down to our kids and making sure that we're giving them our best.
Well, and I think this is excellent. Like, this is the type of information we need to provide meaningful input on the budget. I didn't have any frame of reference to comment on whether it was a good idea that we had two instructional coaches. So I wish these discussions could take place at the beginning of the process and not at the end. I've just been frustrated by the way the process is set up. So this is great news, and I'm glad. As far as the teachers, the class size, that's just status quo. We're just maintaining the number of teachers that we have. And I think Miss Antone, one of the grades lost a teacher, and that teacher is not being replaced. So I know we had budget cuts, but we're really just maintaining.
Right. Because right now, I know that, and please understand that every cut that's made is a very difficult decision when you have to cut positions. And, right now, if we were to decide to bring that position back on, like whatever position, do know that we also have to think about, well, how many core academic teachers will that impact, and it will inflate the class sizes. So that's also something to think about with whatever decision we make, if we were to make any changes. Like I said, unfortunately, it's $500,000.
No, I agree. I just hope that, and I guess, Diane, this is directed to the Go Team office. I hope that this process can change. Maybe we should have had this instructional coach input several years ago. Instead of just getting a budget that's already done and rubber stamping it. So I would like to I hope there's an opportunity to just rework this entire budget process and also get input from the community. there really isn't a mechanism for doing that.
I want to chime in real quickly. I think a lot, and this is a community, David T. Howard community response, I would say, because I am a dean, and it's not the cutting of the position that is so much of an issue. I think we focus a lot on instruction, and which we should. However, just as much as we lost instruction through the pandemic, middle school children, it's a social time. If you understand the middle school concept, everything is built around their stage of development. And during that time, they're learning a huge amount of social skills. And students miss that for a large portion of time. They missed a lot of socialization, conflict resolution, how to manage themselves amongst groups, how to communicate. They did a lot of texting, but they didn't do a lot of verbal communication. And what we saw at the beginning of the years, we saw they struggled with that. So whether you have a dean or you don't have a dean, you have to think about, what are we going to do to support? Like, we put a lot of support in for instruction, but what are we going to do to support our students as they matriculate through middle school and go into high school? They have to develop those skills. They have to have that SEL. They have to have a very solid relationship with an adult that can help them to intervene in issues, and so that they don't take it upon themselves to result to physical contact or cursing or doing whatever they do that is maladaptive in the school setting. So I think that's the thing that really has to be spoken about as we think about instruction. If we don't do that, if we don't have those particular players in the game, then what happens is we end up having students act out in class because they can't do the academic work. And what they know to do is they don't want that attention on them is if they're not sufficient. So what they know to do is to act out and take the attention off of them. And then who's going to deal with those situations? That's, I guess, my concern as a part of the David T. Howard community and going through all that we went through this year. We just have to put something in place to support the students.
Right, and that is where your counselors come in, social workers come in to make sure that we're supporting that process, which is why we make sure that we did have that third counselor. So you do have a counselor per grade level. And like I said, the assistant principals basically is just taking their role back on in terms of the, discipline and dealing with, students in terms of when those types of issues come about. So we did want to make sure that there were 3 counselors.
So are there any other questions or points of discussion? All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the budget?
This is Audrey Reese. I move that we approve the budget.
All right, thank you, Ms. Reese. Do I have a second?
I will second that. This is Dr. Bryant.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant. Been properly moved and second. All those in favor, please raise your hand into the camera. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. The 22-23 school budget has been approved. We will now move to discussion items on our agenda. First up for discussion is the update on March Cluster Advisory Committee meeting by Ms. Keenan.
Hi, everybody. I circulated a document that I know Ms. Baker is going to attach to the minutes. It's my notes from the cluster advisory meeting, which was on March 9th. And we talked about 2 main issues: the STEAM signature program update and the facilities update. With respect to the STEAM signature program, I included some summaries of different graphics that have been developed by APS. And there was really universal support from the principals on all the principals of our cluster for STEAM. Mr. Harness from Spark had a great perspective on how to think of STEAM. He suggested people think of it as hamster: humanities, arts, music, science, technology, engineering, and real world. So STEAM is not just math, not just engineering, not just science. It is a really inclusive way of learning, and it's focused on project-based, a project-based learning approach. So I think the cluster advisory team had a lot of sessions and information when we were deciding about our recommendation as a team between STEAM and IB. And I'll just say, the more I hear about it through the various cluster meetings, that I become an even stronger supporter of STEAM. There was a question about IB and, was it dismissed too quickly? And there were several shortcomings or several problems, I should say, that would occur with the implementation of IB in our cluster as opposed to STEAM. And one of the focuses was the need to eliminate AP programs at Midtown High School. Also, the gifted instruction would change. Under IB, there's no pull-out of gifted students like happens in elementary school. The gifted instruction is a push-in. So there'd be significant changes to the gifted program under IB. And then there was some clarification about funding. Some of the other clusters are farther along in their implementation of their signature programs. Midtown and Carver are just starting the process because we've had to change signature programs. But the schools, excuse me, in the Midtown and Carver clusters are going to receive the same funding for signature program implementation that schools that are further along in the process are receiving. So that's good news. We basically need to play catch up because we're behind since we're having to switch to a new signature program, but APS is providing the level of funding needed to do that catch up. The other discussion was the facilities update, and I know that Ms. Antone is going to go through the different charts and scenarios. So I think what makes sense is for Ms. Antone to provide the summaries, and then I could just add on what some of the comments that we heard related to the two scenarios. And I will say we really focused on the elementary school scenarios. We did not, I don't think we even discussed at the CAT the centennial issue, or if we did, it was not the focus of our discussion.
Okay. What I'll do, I will go ahead and share my screen, and I'll pull up the elementary scenarios here. So let me share my screen. Let's see. And Ms. Baker, I can drop those links in the chat for you, or you. All right. So can you all see that? Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. So on March 3rd, the facilities master planning consultant shared proposed scenarios to address capacity challenges at some of our APS schools. And so what I'm going to do here is just share those scenarios with you and just ask for your feedback, because they do want to get feedback from all of our Go teams of schools who could possibly be impacted by the proposed scenarios. And so just going to kind of walk through to make sure that everyone understands there. And then I'm gonna just pose a couple of questions for you. But this first one is just a community engagement flyer. Of course, March 10th has already passed, but there'll be several upcoming meetings where you'll be able to engage and ask questions and listen to what's going on there. But when we get into looking at the Midtown cluster and some of the proposed scenarios, basically, why are the changes needed? Well, it's because Midtown High School, Morningside Elementary, and Springdale Park are over capacity. And so there are two scenarios presented in that cluster advisory meeting that Ms. Keenan talked about. And so when you look at the first scenario was to create a new K-5 elementary school at the old Inman building. That's basically where we actually transitioned from, okay? And if you look at this first scenario, it says to move 239 students from Morningside north and west, roughly along Piedmont Avenue to the Inman facility. And you see A here as you correlate it with the actual map here. And also move 400 students, if you look at B on the map, move those 400 students from the western portion of Springdale Park to the Inman facility. And then if you see C right there on the map, you'll move 8 students from that isolated area of east of Morningside to Springdale, from Springdale to Morningside. And then you would move 14 students as you look at D over there from the DeKalb County / Emory Annex area in the Springdale zone to Morningside. And then if you see E right there on the map, you move 159 students west of Moreland Avenue in the Mary Lynn attendance zone area to Springdale Park. And so, and what you'll have there is the creation of a new K-5 elementary school, okay? And then the second scenario, excuse me, would be to create a dual campus at Springdale Park, K2, and then at the Inman facility, 3-5. And so what you have here, if you look at the correlation to the map, you would move 239 students from the Morningside, K-5, north and west, roughly along Piedmont Avenue to Springdale Park. And then if you look at B, you move those 14 students from the DeKalb County Emory Annex area in Springdale to Morningside. And then you have, if you see on the map there, C, you move 8 students from the isolated area east of Morningside from Springdale to Morningside. And so this would create, the dual campus at Springdale Park. And so when you think about these two scenarios, and like I said earlier, both of the scenarios, approximately 229 students from the Centennial Academy attendance zone would be, I'm sorry, not Centennial, but the Inman facility would either become a K-5 school or part of a dual campus with Spark, okay? So when you think about those two scenarios, and many of you have been a part of the Inman campus as well, as you think about that area, think about the facilities as well. The questions that we ask are, what are your initial thoughts and reaction to the scenarios? And then what questions do you have for the facilities master planning team? And so the question is, the first question is, what are your initial thoughts?
A dual campus, what does that really mean?
If you think about, I think about Sutton, for example. I know they have, because of, the number of students, they have a campus, more than one campus, basically.
It's split, yeah. Yeah.
So it might be helpful. I can give some of the feedback that we heard at the cluster advisory team meeting, some of the issues and concerns, and then other people can chime in. Under scenario 1, some kids the Inman Park community would be moved from Mary Lynn to Springdale Park. And they have that Inman Park neighborhood has traditionally been part of Mary Lynn for a long time. So there was thought that Inman Park neighbors might be upset about being rezoned out of Mary Lynn. Under scenario, the other issue noted under scenario 1 is that the Virginia Highland neighborhood is cut in two. Right now, all of Virginia Highland goes to Spark. And under this scenario, half of the Virginia Highland neighborhood would go to the new Inman Elementary School, and half of the Virginia Highland neighborhood would remain at Spark. Neither scenario makes any changes to Hope Hill. Some of the concerns raised about scenario 2 were the size. Springdale Park with a dual campus would be over 1,000 students, and that would make it by far the largest elementary school in Atlanta Public Schools. There's no other elementary school that would be as big as the Springdale Park dual campus. Another concern raised about this was the number of transitions, which had also been raised with the 4th, 5th Academy. Under this scenario, you'd have some kids, they would go to Springdale Park old campus for their first few years, and they would have to transition to Springdale Park Annex at the Inman campus. And then it was also noted that the kids currently in kindergarten are at a kindergarten annex. So if this scenario were to go through, the kids in kindergarten right now would go to 3 different buildings for their elementary school. Another concern was transportation under this dual campus scenario, and the difficulty for families of having kids at 2 different campuses. So having your, first grader at one campus and your 3rd grader at the other campus. So the other issue was raised about the lines is sometimes streets are divided in half. And it was indicated that there's definitely an opportunity to make fine tuning to the lines. So, if one street right now is cut in half, there's an opportunity, as I said, to do some fine tuning on the exact boundaries. And I think APS is looking for a way to get that community input to identify kind of on a street by street basis where things might need to be tweaked a little bit.
Ms. Keenan, are you talking about that's a concern with the dual campus or a concern with scenario 1?
With both maps, actually. So both maps, there's going to be some fine tuning on a street by street level.
Any feedback from any of our Go team members?
So it seems, so if they did the dual campus, is that just like rename? They're splitting the grades, and part of those grades would be sent over to the Inman building. That's what they would be doing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, they're taking half of Morningside and pushing it into that as well.
Right.
Like that whole A area. So they're creating a 1,000 student elementary school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jennifer, you were talking really fast, which I love, but I caught all of your concerns with the dual campus. Are there any concerns about the first one?
So it's actually all in my notes. I don't know if you need to worry about typing them, but I can.
I just like an overarching thing, and then people can look in your notes.
So scenario 1 was the Inman Park community, Inman Park neighborhood being cut out of Mary Lynn.
Okay, thank you.
And
So they would go to Hope Hill.
no, they would go to Springdale Park. Hope
Okay.
Hill is not impacted under either scenario.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Well, it seemed, I understand and I can appreciate that under scenario one, some people would be going to a different elementary school. But they're both like excellent schools, right? I mean, just my thoughts on that. They're both excellent schools. It seems like it's the least disruptive because, you know, there could have been some real redistricting with this. So, you know, all change is disruptive. Some will be happy, some won't, but from what I can see right now, this is better than what was put forth before and better than what could be, you know, could have been a really devastating change, I think. So those are my thoughts.
Ms. Reese, when you say this, are you referring to creating a new K-5 elementary school, or are you
Yes.
referring to the dual?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
'Cause
referring to creating a new K-5 school that shifts some things around, the dual campus with three potential transitions for kids who are there now. One of the concerns about all of this had been how transitions disrupt community, that was one of the concerns about the 4-5 Academy, the ability to create community and, you know, continuity for the kids, different things like that. So this seems to overcome that. And if they can go back and do some fine tuning with the streets that might be cut in half, maybe that can even reduce the amount of change a little bit. So these seemed like some good solid, the first scenario I think is a real good solid option with the least amount of upheaval of options that I've seen.
Thank you. I'm
I
capturing
definitely-
I'm capturing the comments for facilities. Yes, Ms. Baker.
I agree. Scenario one seems to be smoother. I will say this though, just I'm not the devil's advocate or anything, but I know that my brother lives over in his kids. He's off Perry and Ridge Road, and so his children went to a dual campus school in in that cluster in North Atlanta, and they had excellent experiences. So it was not a problem. They had K-2 in the one Jackson Elementary School and then the other campus, and they had both kids there. And it was just, you know, I will say this, anytime we think kids are going to be confused or negatively impacted, they can roll. They can, you know, everyone's like, oh, the snake schedule is confusing. The kids are not confused by it whatsoever. They get it. They understand it. So I think that, I mean, just saying, once kids go through it and that is just how it is, that I think honestly, they will be okay. But I do know that we as adults, we get very, very worried about all the things. But I do think that probably scenario one is going to make elementary school families happier.
I support scenario one, the Inman K-5 campus as well. I have concerns about a Springdale Park dual campus. I have concerns about having only one, having an elementary school be a dual campus in the Midtown cluster and all of the other elementary schools being K-5. I think that just sets up issues. If every school is a dual campus, then everyone's in it together. But I think it's unfair to single out the Springdale Park community to be the lone dual campus. And the dual campus having an elementary school of 1,000 kids seems to create significant issues as well. And lots of issues were raised about administration, having Mr. Harness be principal of a 1,000-student school, and then you've got some sort of AP over at the secondary campus, and the need for split resources as well at a dual campus. People were raising the issue of now you need a band teacher at each campus. Now you need a, different special teachers at each campus. I just think, as everyone has said, the Inman K-5 is smoother and maintains the same elementary school experience for all of the elementary schools in the cluster.
I agree with the K-5. It's just consistency for those students that will attend an elementary school, connecting the community back to the school, families being a part of a specific school. I understand that the split campus, but I think it's key for kids to really feel that their family is a part of the school, and as they move through elementary school, it just creates a much better experience for the families, for the kids, and even for the staff of the school. They just build a greater bond to just see those kids move through the school all the way through K-5. So I definitely second the K-5.
Thank you. Any additional feedback? I know Ms. Jacoby is capturing all the feedback in her notes.
I go along with the K-5 elementary school. I think it's just consistency. It's very important for the kids at this age. My thoughts.
Thank you. Okay, if that is all, yes.
Oh, just one, the question before we move on from the elementary schools, do any of you have questions for the facilities master planning team? So if they need to collect data or show anything, did you need more information on the elementary scenarios than what's been presented? Or have questions that are raised by looking at these?
I would like more information on the fine tuning of the street boundaries and how they're addressing streets that were cut in half.
Any additional questions? Okay, all right. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh, we're still on you, Miss Antone, for the principal's report.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Well, and
You have the spotlight today.
Miss Antone, the high school, the Centennial scenario.
Okay, you want me to do Centennial? Okay.
Please.
All right, so I will go over the Centennial scenario as well, and you all let me know if you see my screen. Sometimes we have to go out and come back in. Do you all see that? It should say Centennial Academy at the top.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Centennial Academy is also projected to be over capacity, as well as Midtown High School. However, the Washington cluster schools are underutilized. And so basically what we're looking at, if you see down here under scenario 1, Centennial Academy would change to a K-8 locally authorized charter for the 2024-25 school year. And the Centennial attendance area will be incorporated into Hollis Academy K-8 by redistricting 398 students from Centennial Academy to Hollis Academy during the 2024-25 school year. And then for the 24-25 renewal, Centennial and APS would negotiate enrollment and facilities limited by whatever enrollment cap is set by the charter. And also scenario 2 is continued charter at Centennial as a conversion charter with the facility capacity at 600 in 24-25. And then Centennial is projected to have an enrollment of 812 in the school year of 26-27. And 414 of those students will be from out of zone. Its charter maximum enrollment is 800 and its facility capacity is 606. But if we go back up to where you see 20, 23, 24, right now Midtown High School is overcrowded. And so to address overcrowding at Midtown High School and the underutilization at Washington High School, high school student zone for Centennial Academy attendance area, they will be redistricted from Midtown High School to Washington High School. That's we're looking at about 229 students in the 23-24 school year. And then, like we said earlier, the 24-25 school year to address the capacity challenges at Centennial. The Centennial Academy and APS will have to determine a pathway for the charter renewal that we talked about earlier. And so I think what we should look at is really looking at the overcrowding at Midtown High School and how the students could possibly be rezoned to attend Washington High School, those 229 students, instead of going to Midtown High School, so that that overcrowding is addressed at Midtown High School. And so what are your initial thoughts when you think about that scenario?
So are we talking about incoming students to Midtown, or are we talking about like possible seniors at Midtown being rezoned?
So I guess any student who would leave Centennial Academy in 8th grade going into high school, instead of them going to, like currently they would go to Midtown High School, instead 229 of those students leaving Centennial would go to Washington High School.
So, Mr. Webb, this came up yesterday at the Midtown Go Team meeting. And the grandfathering issue is a little unclear, but what it seemed is that kids who are currently at Midtown right now would get to finish. And that what would happen is starting in 23-24, the rising 9th graders who just left Centennial would go to Washington, and then each class afterward. So there was not, it's my understanding that there's not and there will not be any students kicked out of Midtown who are already there. And Dr. Bachman also said it's about 40 or 50 students per grade. So the 8th grade class coming into Midtown, or the rising 9th graders that come into Midtown from Centennial, she said it's only about 40 to 50 students. But then as people transfer in, it increases by grade. There were some questions or concerns raised at the Midtown Go Team meeting about equity issues, because most of these 229 kids who go from Centennial to Midtown are African American. It was well over 90%. And Dr. Bachman didn't have the exact figure, but people were estimating it was perhaps 95%. So there was a question, of there were some equity concerns raised, given that this change is impacting a predominantly African American student population. On the flip side, Washington is very significantly under capacity, Washington High School. And Dr. Bachman shared that the Washington principal is thrilled by the prospect of having more students come to her school. And it sounded like there were a lot of neat initiatives going on at Washington High School. So, of course, Midtown is a great school and has a great reputation, but it sounded like Washington has some neat stuff going on. And with an influx of more students, Washington will be more successful in implementing the the programs and changes that it's considering.
So that would be my question. And I guess it's not for our Go team, but it would be if these students are, if they go to Washington, what would APS do to enriching their experience at Washington? I do believe that, you know, if it's underutilized, so you have the space, the principal is excited about these kids. That's one thing that is great. It's a principal that's excited to have these kids, but what opportunities are going to be presented to these students and to the students that are at Washington now that will, you know, get these kids excited about going to Washington, because we are taking something from them, even if we don't, you know, it seems like, oh, we're just moving a few kids over. We're taking an opportunity from them that they see as an opportunity to make sure that, you know, they can excel in life. So I think that we just have to, I guess, market or state what it is that when they go to Washington, what is that Washington experience like to get them excited about going to Washington and feeling like they are part of something, because Midtown has done such a great job at marketing how well the product of Midtown, you know, when you come out of Midtown. So we have to do that about Washington. Those students deserve that.
And I want to add to this that this happened to Inman, rezoning children from the Centennial that were in the, you know, 5th grade coming into Inman. They rezoned them and made them stay at that school and brought in Hope Hill at that time under the direction of a specific superintendent. The same thing, this whole scenario sounds very, very familiar to what they did to Inman Middle School and Centennial. So I don't see a difference of what they're doing. They just seem to me pushing African-American kids out of Midtown High School. And that's just it, bottom line. That's my opinion.
And I'll tell you the big concern I have, I felt it was appropriate for the Midtown Go team to address this because there are Centennial kids at Midtown and this was impacting Midtown. We obviously at Inman, we do not have, or sorry, at Howard, we don't have any Centennial students right now. So I don't feel it's appropriate for our Go team to comment on this.
Well, the reason why I'm saying is that because we don't have them, it's because they were rezoned back in the day under Earl Davis. That's why we don't have any.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's why we don't have any. But we gathered Hope Hill. I was at all of those Sensi meetings. I heard everything, and it was always an issue with kids coming from Centennial into Inman Middle School at the time.
Yeah. No, I attended all those as well. I'm just not comfortable opining on this without talking to anyone at Centennial. You know, I mean, so that's my view. We don't have the perspective of Centennial, and there hasn't been any sort of communication with them about this. At the CAT, the cluster advisory, we didn't have anyone from Centennial speak up and share, you know, their perspective on this. So I can't report on that. So I just feel uncomfortable endorsing either one because our Go team doesn't represent the Centennial community.
Hi, this is Audrey Reese. I think that it is appropriate for this Go team to speak on this because right now, students who are at Centennial do end up attending Midtown High School, which of course is the high school in our cluster. So I feel like that it is it's appropriate for us to speak on that, or anyone who wants to share their thoughts should certainly do so. You know, on the one hand, from a pure facilities perspective, I can see those numbers. I would wonder, you know, where does this actually leave? If this redistricting takes place, what is the projected population of Midtown High School at that point? And how does that compare to their capacity going forward? So that is it, oh, well, we'll redistrict out and then Midtown will be over capacity in 3 more years and 5 more years. Just what's the long-term impact of that? So again, that's another reason why it's very appropriate for us to comment on this. But also just from a pure optic perspective, this looks horrible. It looks really, really extremely bad. It looks like it's racial. I'm going to put that on the table. It's going to make Midtown High School even more majority white than it already is. The equity lens is bad. The only way this looks good is just from a pure numbers versus physical building capacity. But this looks awful. I cannot say, obviously, why no one from the Centennial Go team spoke up, but just from where I sit, this looks bad. Maybe it's I don't know where this will end up. I know whenever there's redistricting, it's always difficult. I understand capacity. I understand that Midtown is the fastest growing cluster in APS, but the optics of this are horrible. The equity lens is horrible. The impact on the children or on families who have been hanging in there when Centennial has been so far over capacity. It's so far over capacity, it's never made sense to me, but they're hanging in there until they can get to Midtown High School. Well, you better try to move further in, and we all know the challenges of that. So that's my take on it. I don't know, I'm in this cluster. My child will be at Midtown High School next year. I don't know what I can say. And I certainly can't pull a pure solution out of my hat that can satisfy everyone. But I would just say this looks bad. And sometimes the way a thing looks is the way it is. I would urge them to see if they can do, I don't know, something else.
Well, long time ago, it used to be Fowler Elementary, and Fowler Elementary was zoned into Inman Middle School a long time ago. Now, that's how it actually started on this side of this particular cluster, when we were when we had various areas. It wasn't called a cluster or anything like that. So that's where all of that initiated. That's how children from Fowler Elementary, before it became Centennial. It became Centennial after the Olympics. It was renamed at that point. And I was because I used to work at Inman back in 93, 94 school year. And we had Fowler Elementary children zoned for Inman Middle School.
Wait, Miss, hold on one second. Miss Jacoby has her hand raised, so let's make sure that we're not talking over each other.
Yeah, thank you.
So Miss Jacoby has her hand raised.
So just a couple of things. One thing, because Centennial is a conversion charter, they don't have a go team. They have a governing board, which is a little different scenario, but to the best of my knowledge, they are invited to the cluster meetings. I'll have to check with Travis. I don't know if they attend.
Yeah.
Second thing is, in terms of the students from Centennial who come to Midtown, it is only those students that are in the Midtown attendance zone. So Centennial, because it is considered a conversion charter school, so that in Georgia, there are 2 different types of charter schools. One is a startup charter, which is like Drew or Atlanta Neighborhood Charter, where they can take students from anywhere within the district. The other is what's called a conversion charter, which is what Centennial is. So Centennial starts with an attendance zone, and then depending upon their contract with the district, they can add seats. So part of why Centennial has so many portables and seats is, we talked earlier about choices. That's part of their choice with their board and their charter, to have that many seats for students who live outside of Centennial's attendance zone. So when we're looking as it exists right now, if Centennial I think Centennial has made the choice to have 800 students instead of the 600 the building is capable of holding. But not all 600 of those students live in the Centennial attendance zone. It's only 398 students live in the Centennial attendance zone. So the other 400 students are coming from somewhere else in the district to attend Centennial.
So
And so
I just wanted to
I
say-
just wanted to clarify some of that, so that when we're talking, we understand which population we're talking about.
Do you know how
they're-
many of
they're
that
asking
200
us-
and
They're asking us to opine on scenario 1 and scenario 2. And those are basically what type of charter school should Centennial be. It is not, should Centennial be zoned out of Midtown. Both scenarios contemplate that. So that's why I don't see how we can choose scenario 1 or scenario 2, opining what type of charter system is better for Centennial.
Okay. I will
do you,
capture that.
Ms. Jacoby, do you know of that 229 kids that they would redistrict over to Washington? How many of them are in the Midtown attendance zone? Because that's a real number, right?
All of them right now.
Oh, all of them, all 229.
Right.
Okay.
So those numbers that they're talking about are only those students who, because right now, any of the students who don't live in the Centennial attendance zone, if they do not live in the Centennial attendance zone, then they have to go back to their home high school, wherever that is in the district, or private school, and I know for high schools especially, there are options for students to, it's not called a hardship, but there are ways to academically transfer, right? So I know, for example, Washington has both a culinary program and an agriculture program. So if somebody really wanted to go and study culinary arts, and Midtown doesn't offer culinary arts, they could request a transfer to Washington. And because Washington has space, if those students can get their transportation over there, they could go to Washington. So there are ways to do that.
With these kids, these 229, would they have an option to academically apply to attend Midtown?
No.
Like to say no.
Midtown's overcrowded.
It's over. Yeah, there needs to be space, is my understanding.
Okay. Who could provide those numbers on how this would impact the overcrowding situation at Midtown, so we could see, with these children going somewhere else, what would the capacity and population of the building be?
So that's actually available in the whole
Andrea, it's in
program.
the Word document I sent. So if the 229 kids leave Midtown will be at 94% capacity.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Yep.
So those are all great points. I thank Mr. Webb for what he added, and Ms. Reese as well. But I'll make my statement really short. I mean, this is inequity at its finest. No matter how you paint it, no matter what numbers you put on anywhere, I hope Washington is very excited for these students to enter the building. But I cannot see any benefit for those kids as far as stripping an opportunity from them. I can understand giving them the option if they would like to choose one or the other, but to basically say that we're taking this option away, it's just a huge disparity for these kids, as well as adding diversity to Midtown High School.
I think the option is necessary, honestly. I mean, I know we're sort of pondering over this, but when I think about it, everybody doesn't need Midtown, to be honest with you. Midtown is not for everybody. So some students might opt out. And maybe if APS looks at this a totally different way and maybe pours resources into Washington and creates Washington to be some kind of magnet high school or something, and you could take the population out of Midtown, population from other places, and go there. But I think it's like Ms. Reese says, it could get real ugly. And at the end of the day, the ugliness falls on the students. It falls on the students that are being pulled out of Midtown. You know, the question is, like, we don't feel it, but they have to ask, like, why? Is it because I'm Black? Is it because I live in this area? Is it because that they don't want me? All of those things resonate in a child's mind or a student's mind or a young adolescent's mind. We're looking at numbers, but we don't deal with the impact of them emotionally. You know, it's a difficult, I know it's a difficult conversation to have, but the reality is we do need to put this out there, and it needs to be heard, because some of these students don't have families that will speak up for them. They don't have the family members that will, the voices won't be heard. Let me just say that.
All right. Ms. Jacoby, were you able to capture all?
I think so. The other thing is, did you have any specific questions for the facilities master planning teams? And I put a link in the chat. It's atlantapublicschools.us/FMP, which stands for Facilities Master Plan. And there you can find the full PowerPoint presentation and all of the numbers and data that shows the projections for 5 and 10 years out. Like what current overcrowding is, what overcrowding would look like with each one of these scenarios, not just with Centennial, but with the elementary schools. So if you want to do a deeper dive into the data, it is at that site.
Thank you, Mr. Kobe. Any other input or discussion? All right, we can move on to the principal's report.
All right, I will make this very brief. When we look at, we just talked about facilities master planning, safety protocol updates, just letting everyone know that we are just about finished all of our scheduled drills. We will look at doing a lockdown intruder drill between now and spring break, but we will communicate with families to make sure that they know what is going on before we actually do that, and also do some more reminders during advisory, so our students will be well aware, as well as we don't want to cause any anxieties or fears and things of that nature.
Ms. Antone, one thing that just as a classroom teacher, we still don't have like a one-pager about like lockdown drills. I know that Ms. Beatles shared one at a faculty meeting, but she's never shared any of that. And so if we could just have like just a real brief one, I would like to print it out and put it in my subfolder, because my subfolder, you know, in case God forbid anything were to happen, I just want there to be a plan and action. And right now I don't trust my memory from August about what was stated. So if we could just get an email with like, just lockdown in, lockdown out, hard lockdown, soft lockdown, just for everyone to be crystal clear about what those terms mean. Because we don't have that in print anywhere. It's not in our staff faculty handbook or any, I've looked everywhere.
Yeah, so I know Ms. Beadle sent that out. I will get with her to make sure that that is shared with all staff. Thank you, Ms. Baker. In terms of universal screener, the BAS3 best for emotional needs behavioral screener. Right now, we are in the process of mailing those home to families, and our counselors are in the process of getting ready to pull students in to have those one-on-one chats to make sure that they're screening, to make sure that students who scored in that intensive category really need to be in that category to receive the necessary supports. Sometimes students may not understand a question or need clarification, so they are beginning that process. And it does take quite a bit of time, because we want to make sure that we touch upon each kid that needs to be touched there and receive the necessary supports. We will have our Rising Ram Parent Night in person on March 24th. So that is coming up. And also there was the Go Team recommendation for gate class loads for 6th and 7th grade. I know that right now, currently, our 8th grade students, some of our 8th grade students do get anywhere up to 3 gate classes. For 6th and 8th grade, 8th graders do not have teams, so it is a lot easier to do that in 8th grade. For 6th and 7th grade, they are on teams. We haven't gotten to that point in scheduling yet, but I know that our person that does scheduling they are building out additional gifted sections for grade 6 and 7. In discussing this, we did talk about the concern of unintentionally creating some homogeneous classes where you have majority of the students struggling when you put more of the students who are high performing or gifted in the same classes. So do know that definitely could happen, when you have teams. So just wanted to share that as well, but they are building out additional gifted sections, but haven't quite got to that point yet with scheduling. The 8th grade activities, we do have a parent committee, we have a committee of teachers and admin and parents working on the 8th grade activities, end of the year activities, and that's well on the way. And so do know that our students will have the celebration at the end of the year, and the trips at the end of the year, Six Flags, and I had that pulled up here. Let's see, where is it here? Let's see.
I've got it memorized.
Thank you. Can you share that with us, Ms. Baker?
So May 13th, we're going to Six Flags. And then the very last week of school, Tuesday is the picnic outside, kind of a field day. And then Wednesday, we will have a movie day, and that night will be our 8th grade dance, which is, it's not a prom, but it is a special night. And then the following day, we'll have our 8th grade end of year ceremony with awards and everything.
Yeah. So that is well on the way. So I know our students and staff are really excited about being able to do this again since at least a couple of years. And so that is exciting. And so that concludes my report, and I will turn it back over to you, Chair Abernathy.
Are we able to get that actually in writing? Because we like to try to put that on our schedules as well, so we know exactly what's going on.
It's on the calendar.
Oh, it's on the calendar. Okay.
Yeah, it's on the calendar.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and the 8th grade parents got a flyer about it.
Okay.
I think someone, the PTO or administration or someone might want to consider some suggested guidelines for the dance. As Ms. Baker said, it's not a prom. And I just remember hearing anecdotes and reports that kids were showing up in limousines and stuff. And again, that's rumor. I wasn't there. My other daughter, my 8th grader, hers, was canceled because of COVID. So I didn't personally see it, but maybe some guidelines or suggestions might be good for everyone.
Nothing wrong with partying like a rock star, Miss Tina.
I've never seen it. I mean, Dr. Bryant, Mr. Webb, you guys have been in 8th grade with me. I've never seen a limousine roll up. I've been in 8th grade since 2015 when my son was in 8th grade. And
Yeah,
kids, they dress like in
very well. Yeah.
and they dress, the girls wear dresses. Some go a little over the top. They get all spiffy. You'll have some kids that dress like, alike with like a matching suit and a dress, which is really, really cute, but they don't have to. They can just, it's not jeans. People don't usually wear jeans, but they do dress up. And then at the end of the year ceremony, they always tell them, just dress like you're going to church. They look nice, but there's no like dress code. I think 1,000 years ago, Inman used to have all the guys wore black, all the girls wore white. That
No
will
dress
not
code.
die out, and they still try to do it. I know my daughter a few years ago when she was in 8th grade, she and her girlfriends all did get white dresses, but I was like, yeah, what are you doing? They're like, it's tradition. I'm like, no, it's not. You're making this up. But anyway, they do what they do.
Thank you, Ms. Baker, for sharing that. And now, Coach Abernathy, I will turn it back over to you.
All right. Now to announcements. We'll announce to remind all non-APS staff, Go team members, to reset your APS email password if you have not done so in the last 60 days. I will also announce that the next Go team meeting is April the 26th at 4:45. Do we have anybody scheduled for public comment?
No, we did not.
Okay. Are there any other announcements?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
While we're keeping that 8th grade train going, we are scheduled to kindly go to Midtown High School and have our tour. I want to say April 12th. So right after we get back from spring break.
Yep, it's April 12th.
I think I do remember hearing about that because the new football coach at Midtown is also speaking with our student athletes. All right, if there are no other announcements, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I just have one.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Please complete your training. We sent a reminder earlier today for the ones that are online and asynchronous on Ellis. And we will be sending out, if you haven't done the live portion of new member training, remember there are 2 parts. There's the online and a live. We have 2 live sessions coming up, one on Monday, the 21st, and one on Thursday, the 31st. Both are from 4 to 6. So if you haven't done that, you'll be getting that email tonight or tomorrow morning. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Ms. Jacoby. Any other announcements?
No, sir.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to join Joy Sheets.
Ms. Sheets has motion. Do I have a second?
Jesse Webb, second.
Mr. Webb has second. All those in favor, raise your hand in the camera. Any opposed? Raise your hand in the camera. Any abstentions? All right, hope everybody has a great evening. Thank you for being in the meeting today and see you next time.
See you in a month. Bye.